What is this? Does it strike a chord of your childhood when you used to draw the diagrams? First one was amoeba, as I told you, and the second one was Euglena that you used to make. So, in the kingdom Protista, another type of photosynthetic organisms that we are going to study is Euglena, and this is the simplest diagram that we used to make earlier, and now you are going to understand it from the characteristics point of view, that what this organism is all about, why it has been put under Protista. So, you see over here, this is Euglena, the typical example of Euglenoids. Euglenoids is a class, or you can say phylum, that is present in the kingdom Protista. And what are the class characteristics for this particular phylum? We are going to see. I need not to explain these things. This is a typical cell, typical eukaryotic cell, which is having a nucleus, it is having mitochondria. There is an eye spot that is present, flagella is present. There are two flagella, though they are not shown over here, and a long flagella. There are chloroplasts which are important for photosynthesis. Important thing to be remembered, which you might not have drawn in your earlier classes, junior classes, is the pellicle. This also has been introduced to you in your syllabus of classes earlier than this. Then there is a nucleolus which is shown, there is a contractile vacuole, somewhat stellar in shape. These things are very common, and you have idea about them. Now, what we are going to see is that what are the characteristic features of euglenoids. First thing is that they are plant-like protists. Plant-like protists, that means they would be photosynthetic, something which must have classified them under Plantae, but later on, as you know, this is a taxonomic misfit which come and settle down in Protista. So, euglenoids would be those only, and they exhibit some animal characteristics. Now, when I say plant-like and animal characteristics, so the basic difference for distinguishing between a plant and an animal is either the cell structure, or it is going to be their nutrition habits that we are going to study. So, in this case, in case of euglenoids, it is the mode of nutrition which is the exact definition for this particular sentence that we saw now, that they exhibit animal-like characteristics in mode of nutrition, and they are plant-like protists. That means they have both autotrophic and heterotrophic mode of nutrition, as we saw in the diagram that they were having a chloroplast inside their body. So, the chloroplast is responsible for the photosynthesis, and the chloroplast, the pigments present inside the chloroplast, you might be surprised to know that they are very much similar to those of higher plants. And when the conditions are not appropriate, that means in the adverse conditions, these organisms would resort to the heterotrophic mode of nutrition. That means they are not able to make their own food. Instead, they would resort to those modes where they would consume the food made by somebody else. So, they are mostly photosynthetic, some are heterotrophic. Another characteristic is they are single celled. Obviously, that is why they are placed in phylum kingdom Protista. One or two flagella may be present. The first evolutionary organism with primitive eye spot. Now, we had seen that there was an eye spot present. What is this eye spot meant for? This eye spot is for detecting the light for photosynthesis. That means eye spot is also, you know, a handy organelle which is for photosynthesis only, and that points to their plant-like characteristics, and the typical example for euglenoids is Euglena. Now, moving further, what is this? Now, Euglena, you might have seen this part, you would have seen in your real life. Those of you who watch these oceanographic series and rest of the things might have observed that this is something which is present on the rotten ships and other decaying substances that are present, and this is that we are transitioning from the plant-like protists to fungal protists. And as I told you, there are fungal-like protistans which are known as slime mold. So, this is nothing else but a slime mold that develops over rotten things, dead and decaying things, and it is like fungi. Earlier it was classified under fungi only, but later on it was kept under Protista. And let us see what slime molds are all about. What are the characteristics? They could be cellular, or they could be acellular, that is masses with several nuclei, and this particular arrangement, that is acellular, encompassation of acellular masses of several nuclei, is known as Plasmodium. Now, I would point to one thing that we are going to get across this term again. One is this, alright, and one is this. I'm going to use this again. Now pay attention from your knowledge of taxonomy and systematics. This is a term while this is a scientific name. This is a sporozoan that is a causative agent for malaria in humans, and this is a term which is used for aggregation and acellular arrangement. Unicellular but can gather and act multicellular, and that is what Plasmodium is. When they are unicellular, yes, they look like a single cell, they would work like a single cell as an organism, but they gather together and they act multicellularly. That means the action of the organism would be at multicellular level. That would be Plasmodium arrangement. And the role and function of these slime molds is that they form the forest floors or composting recycle organic matter. As I told you, dead and decaying composting purpose is solved by the slime molds. Now we are going to see the difference between the cellular forms and the acellular forms, and over here we are going to use the term plasmodial for the acellular ones, which were aggregates of several nuclei, where the unicellular organisms worked as multicellular ones. Now they resemble amoebas, they ingest bacteria by phagocytosis, that means the mode of nutrition would be heterotrophic. They have multinucleated large cells. So the first difference is that they would be amoeboid in the shape, they would be large cells and they would be multinucleated. The cells aggregate into stalked fruiting body. Now try to recall what we had discussed in the introduction to fungi, or if you haven't seen that, you must have noticed that the classification of fungi is made up on the basis of fruiting body. If you haven't heard about it, I am telling you that whenever we deal with kingdom fungi, we have further classes inside it. The classes which are made, they are according to the fruiting bodies, type of fruiting bodies which are present in the fungi, and as I told you, this is in close resemblance with fungi. So the cell aggregates which are in the cellular slime molds, they are stalked into fruiting bodies, and the cytoplasm separates into stalked sporangia. Now what are sporangia? Sporangia are the sites, or you can say they are the parts of the cell where the spores are going to be formed. So this is one difference. One would be forming fruiting body, other would be forming sporangia. You come across this word sporangia or sporangium in the plant kingdom specifically. Then some cells could become spores and help in further perennation of the species, and over here the nuclei, whatever they are present in the plasmodial slime molds, they would undergo meiosis and form uninucleate haploid spores. That means you are going to see some sort of generation alternation over here as well. Okay. Now we are going to move further to protozoans, and what we are going to see in protozoans is that what are the basic characteristics of protozoans. In the protozoans, we have further inside the protozoa only, the phylum Protozoa, that is part of animal kingdom by certain authors in their books, and over here we have it in Protista. The protozoans are further divided into certain classes, and those classes are different classes based on the basis of their mobility, or you can say the organ of motility, the organ which is responsible for their motility. On that basis we have done the division of these protozoa. Before we go to those classes which are rhizopods, which are ciliates and flagellates and sporozoans, the 4 different classes, one by one we are going to deal with that. You can just ignore this if you can pay attention to, but before that we have to see what are the characteristics. What they say is that these are single celled, yes, because they are part of Protista. They are eukaryotic, again the same thing is being repeated, that are noted for their ability to move. Now as I told you, on the basis of the organ or the organelle which is responsible for their motility. Over here there won't be any organ because they are unicellular, so some organelle would be responsible for their motility. We are going to see what that motility would be. On the basis of their mobility, we just classify the protistans into phylum Protozoa. Now sometimes referred to as animal like protists, that's why some authors classify them under kingdom Animalia. They live in many environments, they are highly diverse in their habitat. Most are heterotrophic. Yes, most of them are heterotrophic. They do not have photosynthetic modes of nutrition, obtaining their nutrients by ingesting small molecules into food vacuoles. That means they have holozoic mode of nutrition, where they consume the food through their vacuoles. Now there we have few well known protozoan according to the scale they have been drawn, and you can see over here how huge is amoeba. This amoeba is the first distorted diagram that we make ever in our biological knowledge. Then we have a small RBC, we have Trichonympha, which goes and inhabits the guts of termites which are responsible for destroying your furniture. Then we have Trypanosoma, which is responsible for African sleeping sickness. What I am pointing towards over here is you need not to remember the names, you just have to see according to the scale how much size variations you can see within these protozoans only. Now you see over here, this is red blood cell which is drawn over here, so small in size, and inside it there is Plasmodium. Plasmodium is a sporozoan which is responsible for causing malaria to the human being. So such a small organism and such a huge organism, see the difference. Then we have a dinoflagellate, which was the part of this phylum, kingdom Protista only. In the beginning we have discussed. Then there is Entamoeba Histolytica, very small, it is a type of amoeba only, but that is responsible for causing dysentery, that is normally what we call as food poisoning, as we can say, Entamoeba Histolytica. Then we have Euglena, we had talked about Euglenoids. So you see that this part 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. For 5 of them, they are the protozoans, and you can see the rest of protistans how that vary in their sizes. Moving further, we are going to see the classes. But before that, a general overview of protozoan general characteristics. Again, it is a sort of repetition only, but more you repeat the things, more you are able to learn, and this being totally, there is no logic behind the things. This chapter is more of analytical, so it's better we keep on revising the things. First is unicellular, and they perform all physiological functions such as locomotion, reproduction, respiration, ingestion, digestion and excretion at a single cell level. That means their organelles would be responsible for carrying out all these functions. They vary in size and shape. Just now we saw the difference of sizes on the scale, and some are visible while others require high magnification under a microscope. The majority of protozoa are free living, but some are parasitic. We are going to deal with parasitic, especially the sporozoans. They are highly parasitic in their behavior. They have both sexual and asexual reproduction which occurs, and the majority of protozoa, they reproduce by asexual reproduction. That is why they have sustained so much in the forms of parasitic behavior that they show inside different organisms. Now, how do we classify protozoa on the mode of locomotion? First is amoeboids. Okay. Other name for amoeboids is rhizopods. Then we have ciliates, they have cilia around them. Then we have sporozoans, which are non-motile, they will not have any organelle which is responsible for their motility, and flagellates, of course, the long flagella would be responsible for their motility. This is what you have to, from here you have to keep on memorizing the things, and once you start memorizing, let's get into depth more. And that the first thing is the amoeboids that we talked about. The other name for them is rhizopods. Okay. The phylum Rhizopoda includes a large group of protists that move by means of Pseudopodia. Now, what is a Pseudopodia? Pseudopodia is nothing but supposedly you have thrown, nowadays many of people, they play a lot with slimes and rest of the things. Supposedly you have thrown water and you put your fingers around it, and those finger like projection that the fluid would be taking in itself, that would be Pseudopodia. Same is in the case of amoeba. Supposedly amoeba has to move in this direction. You know, whenever you have to draw amoeba, nobody deducted your marks for whatever shape you wanted to make it, because they do not have specific shape. Now, if it has to move in this direction, it will increase the cytoplasm over here and move further. So there is a cytoplasmic streaming that is observed, and this would decrease in size because rest of the cytoplasm is moving towards. So these tube like structures which act as a feet, they are known as tube feet, and the other name for them is Pseudopodia. This is extension of cytoplasm, as you can see over here. If it has to move forward, that is Pseudopodia, and those organisms, single celled organisms which use such mode for motility, they would be under rhizopods. Most rhizopodians, or we can say most amoeboid protozoans, use their pseudopodia to capture prey and for locomotion. They are heterotrophic. They feed on a wide range of bacteria, algae and other protists. So, this thing we have discussed, that they have heterotrophic mode of nutrition, and these pseudopodia have a very important role in their locomotion as well as their predatory behavior, whatever they are having. The rhizopods are found in fresh water, marine and in soil, marine water and in soil they would be found. That means they have both terrestrial and aquatic habitats where they can survive. That means their distribution is a sort of ubiquitous in the entire earth, we can say. Now, what is this? This is the Plasmodium that we have. It is you can say scanning electron microscope presentation, and later it has been added coloration so that 3D presentation of Plasmodium could be seen. Now, over here this not Plasmodium, sorry, it is Paramecium. Pardon me for using the word Plasmodium. This is these small hair-like projections, very small hair-like projections are cilia, and so many cilia like oars. Oars are those sticks which are used for propelling the boats with the hands. You must have seen in some or other popular culture that we have boats and somebody is using the oars to propel it further with their own hands. In the same way, these small cilia are oar-like projections. They help the organism to move further, and as we are seeing, the classification is made up on the basis of motility or the motility organelle. So, over here we have cilia, and the phylum of these ciliates, the characteristics that we are going to see is one by one. Let us see what they are talking about. They possess cilia, yes they do, simple cilia or compound ciliary organelles during some part of their life cycle. Most species, they have two kind of nuclei, macronuclei and micronuclei. Now, recall the diagram that you used to make of Paramecium in your earlier classes. You used to make two nuclei, that thing they have mentioned over here. Some members of the phylum, they engage in sexual reproduction, and how that sexual reproduction takes place? It takes place by conjugation, or there could be autogamy and cytogamy. Now, the word gamy refers to fusion of gametes. Autogamy, that means inside the cell there would be formation of gametes, and those gametes would fuse and form an individual, and in case of cytogamy, two cells would unite, and entire cells, there won't be any gamete formation properly. Entire cell can act as a gamete. Most ciliates are free living. However, a few groups are commensals or parasitic. So, new word you are introduced to, commensals. Commensals is a condition where one organism is getting the benefit while other is not getting any sort of harm or benefit, and this is an ecological term that you come across. So, basically the protozoan would be present over there, but it will not have much effect on the other organism's life cycle. Important taxonomic criteria for members of this group include the structure of the cortex and arrangement of kinetosomes. Now, these kinetosomes are present inside the cell because we are not supposed to get into the detailed cytological arrangement of this phylum. So, we just have to remember that the classification that would be made, it would